Welcome to the InfoSec Insider podcast, brought to you by URM, the UK's leading information and cybersecurity specialists.
Hi, my name's Annie and I'm here today with Alastair, Stewart and Tibor, Laczko, who are both QSAs with us at URM. Welcome to another episode of InfoSec Insider. So today, Tibor, Alastair and I are going to be talking about the people side of PCI DSS, which is obviously a really important part of any organisation's compliance programme, because you can have the best firewalls and encryption in the world, but if your people are letting you down, then you're no good. So my sort of first question for you guys to sort of start off our conversation is, if an organisation's staff can just take a photo of a screen with their phone, is PCI DSS not basically pointless?
Yeah. Short answer, no.
So this is the whole can you control people scenario, isn't it? This is, the weakest link is the squishy bit between the chair and the keyboard, which, PCI DSS has a bunch of controls around it. It does have ways of dealing with what people should be doing. It's even a category of device. PCI DSS categorizes people, processes, and technology as everything that's in scope. So, we come across this quite a bit as well, don't we, Tibor? We come across all sorts of...
we see the most modern technology at a client. Their firewall top-notch, their defense in depth is top-notch, but then their people's control is just all out of sync. The human element is not the first thing when people think when it comes to PCI, I think. But then, as you said, it's one of the biggest liability, I think, in any sort of security or cyber security relation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the PCI DSS does have controls that people have to adhere to. So you should give staff training. You should give them guidance. You should give them processes of what they should do and how to do it. And you should train them on it regularly. If they don't follow the processes, that's not something that PCI or anybody else can control. Yeah. That's a HR issue. If your staff aren't doing their job properly, you do it through your normal HR processes. But as long as you've given them the right tools to do their job, if it's, for example, a manual pause and resume. We often see clients that have call recording and it's manual pause and resume, so they have to push a button to stop the recording. You need to make sure they're pushing that button, and if they're not, you follow it up and deal with it. But you've given them the tools and the training to protect the security as best you can.
Yeah, and then if you just take, use the example of taking a photo of a screen that has a pen on it. If that happens, you're already not PCI compliant. So you should have all the controls in place that person doesn't have a notepad on. I'm assuming we're talking about a call center person, hypothetically. So they don't have a notepad with them. They don't have their phone with them. They're not able to record, even if their job requires to see a full card number, which again, it's a question. Maybe they don't, like a truncated version of a pen is enough to do their job. You need to, least privilege, whatever, just provide access to the least amount of information for anyone, basically, to do their job.
Yeah, if they don't need to see it, don't let them see it. And if they do, you should have physical security controls on the room anyway, because it's physically in scope. So there should be key entry. Only the right people should go in or come out. And so if you're doing that, you can... A lot of call centers have lockers. They can't take their phones in, and there's no notepads and stuff. So you can give them as little temptation as possible to be able to break the rules you're setting for them.
It doesn't
and ultimately they do. No, I mean it's if somebody's taken a picture on their phone, there's clearly they have a motivation for doing that kind of thing. It's not an accidental recording. It's not like they needed to jot it down because they thought, I'm going to forget this number and jotted it down and then left it accidentally. Taking a picture is a deliberate act. So you would deal with that through any other, employee committing inside a crime type process that you would want to deal with it through. But accidentally you should be able to prevent that. I've seen call centers with whiteboards built into the desks so they can wipe them clean at the end of every night and that kind of stuff. We've all seen that type of setup.
Yeah. Although, I remember one of my first, well, not first, but at the very beginning of my career, which was well over a decade ago, we audited the call center and all the physical controls were in place. No notepads, no phones, no nothing. But then two friends were sitting side by side taking calls or whatnot. And for a transaction, so they decided that they're going to remember one of them will remember the first 8 digits of the card number, of a card number that the client read out, and the other one will remember the other 8. And they're going to take their break and write it down. And they successfully did it, actually. But the smart people they were, one of them bought a ticket to Australia on his name. The other one brought a huge television delivered to his house. So it was impossible to detect who they were. Sure enough, quickly they lost their job. But it happens less and less these days, I think.
Yeah. You can't. The thing is, the standard itself can't protect against that kind of thing. You can't protect against human behavior. We cannot patch humans like we can computers. If we could, life would be easy. You just have to make sure you've got controls in place to try and catch that when it happens, or just prevent it by training them that that's not an okay thing to do. And clearly they knew it wasn't an okay thing to do. They knew they were going to be committing a crime when they did that, and they still decided to do it. And there's little you can do to stop that. Most systems now are automated pause and resume. If you do have manual pause and resume, my general advice is to every so often randomly pick calls that have card numbers in to listen back to them and just spot check that they're being blanked out. And if you find they aren't, you can go and retrain the relevant people. So spot checks to try and keep the error rate down.
But even I think pause and resume, like agent driven, is less and less likely. So actually, in general, call center agents taking payments or entering data themselves is less and less on the market. I think product like QSAs border, there are a lot of different solutions that the agent never sees or hear any sort of card number. That's if it's financially viable, that's where I think everybody should move.
Yeah, absolutely. With cloud-based DTMF solutions that are doing the tone stuff, it becomes much cheaper than it was 5 years ago to do DTMF, where the customer just types it on their phone and then the operator hears nothing, sees nothing, there's no card numbers. And these providers can usually integrate that DTMF with virtually any payment application you care to mention. Exactly. So the cost has come down on those. There's plenty of even virtual call center solutions out there now whereby your staff just log on to a virtual application that's doing all the call center and call recording stuff and everything else behind the scenes for you, and they don't see or do anything other than talk to the person. So those solutions are there, and they're not as expensive as they used to be. It's controlling humans in call centers is much easier these days.
Going back to sorry.
No, I was going to say where I see problems with humans is these days is with things like admin IT people and access and the levels of access they have and what they can do with that access and the logs and recording of activities. It's more about the security risk of an administrator's account being compromised because that IT administrator has way more access than they should because they think they're important and they need that access and that kind of stuff. That's where we see, or the CEO has an admin level account because he's the CEO and it gets compromised. That's people's desire to have more access and power than they need is where we get problems these days.
Plus laziness. When a system administrator logs in, they should have 2 accounts, one their normal account and one when they do admin tasks. But then, why should I log out of my admin account? Because I can do pretty much everything and I don't need to log in, log out again. So laziness, ignorance, unfortunately, again, we're talking about people. So we see this more often.
Laziness is the enemy of security, absolutely. The whole writing the passwords down on a sticky note on the back of the keyboard thing because you have to change it too often, that old debate, which hopefully version 4 solved that debate because now you just use MFA and then they don't have to change their password. So hopefully we've solved that problem with multi-factor authentication. Although I'm sure lazy people will find a way around that if they want to. I don't know about you, but I have quite a few conversations with IT guys talking about remote access to the CDE because under version 4, you have to have that double step MFA. Where you have MFA for remote and then MFA to get into the CDE. And the admins are going, well, why? I've already MFA'd. And you have to explain that each control in the standard is unique. It exists to solve a particular risk, and you can't use one control to cover for another control, and they still don't get it. You still go down that rabbit hole.
Yes, and and the uncomfortableness in it for me usually is when you try to convince them and you bring all your logical and security and your knowledge and experience, and then they still refuse to understand. Your last reserve is, I'm sorry, but this is what the standard says. You're not doing it for me. You need to be. You want to be compliant. So even after you try to explain and convince them to this is what you need to do, sometimes you have to resort for, sorry, this is what the standard says.
Yeah, especially with remote access. Remote staff and remote users is a massive high risk, and the standard does all it can to control it. But that all blew up during the COVID lockdown, where everybody was working from home, and suddenly you had call center operators sat in their living room taking calls and typing card numbers on networks that were just wild and unsecure.
Home Wi-Fi, yes.
Yeah, and all that, and that's when it became a real problem with remote access and stuff. So, you don't know what they're doing at home. You can't control the physical space. You can't see who's looking over their shoulder. So if you've got home workers taking payments, that's a big no in PCI. So don't do that. Just don't.
And I think, like a lot of people, when the new iterations of PCI comes out, it's more of a reactive standard, I think, but they try to be intentional. I think they see where the problem is, where all the compromises are. They have, much better data, I think, than what we have. And if there's a requirement, usually there is a reason for it. And it's, as you said, it's trying to plug a hole where, compromises happen.
Yeah, it is a reactionary standard, but then the nature of the fact that it can't iterate itself quickly means it has to be reactionary. Although they do look forward. So with the whole change to MFA and not changing the password, they've gone with NIST guidance and the UK cyber standard guidance, which is all headed that way, and they've seen where the trend is going, and they've stuck with the logical security trends for that kind of stuff. Remote access was a thing that EFSA was suddenly thrust upon the world when everybody had to work remotely, and I think the council accepted that there would be a lot of non-compliant organisations for a while until they sorted it out. And even us, we were doing remote walkarounds. We were doing assessments where people were walking around data centres holding up mobile phone cameras for us to see physical security, which was just not ideal at all. But
I've never had more vertigo than looking at those cameras. People slamming around. That was not a pleasant experience, that's for sure.
The other one I had recently is I had a client that had a call center environment, and they had the call center network. And when we looked at the network, we realized that they had things like printers and stuff that were in the call center for printing out stuff, but because the way the network was set up, they were just in the same subnet. And you're like, well, hang on, your printer's now in scope. And they were like, but we don't print card numbers on it. I know, but it's a device that's an entry point in, because these printers have got wireless and all the fancy stuff they've got now. Suddenly you get that off that network. And they did, they moved it off. But you've got to consider that in these type of environments, remote environments, call center environments, there's all sorts of devices everywhere, especially once you start opening up wireless, then you're into a world of problems with wireless access. I don't like.
Yeah, my advice to any clients is, if there's a possibility to not have Wi-Fi in your scope or CD, just keep it that way. Don't try to get modern and wireless. You don't need to.
You don't need that mess. You don't need people sat outside your building getting into your wireless network and doing all sorts of fancy stuff. You need to keep it in wired, and then it's easy to be secure, much easier to be secure. I guess it all comes down to, when we go back to people, it all comes down to training, doesn't it? With people, all comes down to training.
And I think we finally passed the point of the training being the same slideshow for 10 years, and everybody knows what's going to be the next slideshow. And then when you do the quiz, exactly every single question because you've done it a million times. With version 4, again, you need to update your training. You need to keep it up with technology. You need to introduce social engineering. You had to introduce phishing, which was not specifically called that previously. So so the standard is trying as much as a standard, I think, possibly can do. For regulating your people,
Yeah, and the people who work in the call centers and the people who work, in retail environments and handling the card details, they're not high up your business. They're not vested in your business. They've not got no vested interest in protecting your business. They're doing a job. People who work in call centers are doing a job not because they love working in call centers. They do it because it's a job that pays them money. Same as people working in retail. The large majority of them are young people, students. It's a passing through job. So they've got no vested interest in adhering to your security principles. So you need to keep it as simple and as easy and as clear as possible so that they can't make mistakes that compromise your security. You have to understand that they're not vested in it. They're just ordinary people trying to earn a living, and they don't really have any care about your customer's credit card security. They just want to do their job and go home.
So don't even allow them the opportunity to mess it up. I think that would be the takeaway from me.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. So next question to sort of spark some discussion for you guys is, could card data leak through CCTV cameras in a call center?
Yes, absolutely.
That was a resounding yes.
It is. Yeah. It's unusual for us QSAs. Is a resounding agreement of yes.
Yes.
Normally the answer is it depends. But no, if your CCTV is recording the screen, that can be a big problem. You have to have CCTV or some kind of security control, and in most call centers you want it, but you've got to be aware of exactly where it's pointing.
And if there's a possibility, or if you can not point it to a screen of a call center person who sees card numbers, that would be ideal. Because once you do, technically your CCTV recordings become cardholder data, and all the other requirements, not only requirement 9, which talks about normally physical security, but everything else becomes in scope. So that opens up a whole new can of worms that nobody wants to take on.
No, you don't want. It's not like you don't want card numbers in your call recordings. You don't want card numbers in your emails. You don't want them in your CCTV because it's a whole mess of data that you just can't control as well as you should. For starters, you'd have to encrypt that, and then encrypting that much video footage is going to be horrendous on a processing side of things. So no, you really don't want to.
The good news is, though, even if you're in a high security call center, like a very busy call center, you can get like privacy screens for the agent screen. So even if the recording points to a screen, it's not going to be able to capture what's on it. So there are ways,
cheap and simple solutions to solving that problem. They don't involve fancy AI software to blank out the screen mid-video feed or whatever it is you decide to do. So absolutely, CCTV is a problem in call centers. We've already talked about mobile phones as people taking them in and stuff. So there's the physical side of PCI DSS is often overlooked, partly because it seems so simple, I guess. Whenever you think about what the PCI DSS requires for physical security, it's not much more than have a lock on your door. If we're being honest, you need to have facility
in, who's going out.
Facility entry controls and tracking who's going where. That's about the long and the short of it. I mean, it's a bit more detailed than that, but ultimately, it's not. You don't need to have anything fancy tracking wise or anything crazy. You don't even need to have CCTV if you've got facility entry controls. It's a case of one or the other. Both. But it's one or the other. So it's often overlooked physical security because it's just simple to do. Or in the flip side of it, if you're a retail outlet, the physical security controls don't apply because the public has to have entry. So you end up not having the physical controls and going, well, hang on, shouldn't I? No, it's a shop. You don't need it. So.
Plus, I don't know, these days, there are many assessments I do, and I'm sure you do. You're the same thing. Your client is, their entire CD is cloud-based. So requirement 9 is technically becomes not applicable unless you're a data center provider or managing data halls or whatnot. Then only requirement 9 is applicable. So with cloud computing, there's more and more physical security is less and less.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is. People are outsourcing. So you'll find most people, I know maybe half a dozen of my clients who all outsource their payments to the same call center company because they're the big call center providers. And so those are the ones that do it. So it gets overlooked a lot of the time.
So next one for you guys. can a Bluetooth headset used in a call center really bring PCI DSS issues?
Interesting. That's not something I've come across or even possibly thought about, actually.
Yep, I'm the same.
Most headsets are wired in call centers, but Bluetooth wireless headsets. I suppose if the customer is reading out card numbers over the call live, if you haven't got DTMF and that kind of stuff, then card data is going over your Bluetooth headset, but it's not recorded. So it's data in transit, right?
Yes.
So this is an interesting, because it's data in transit over a wireless, but it's Bluetooth, which is not secure. You can't possibly secure, as far as I know, you can't have encrypted Bluetooth.
So it could connect to your laptop, or it could connect to your soft phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are two possibilities here.
Yeah, as you can tell, it's not something we've ever really come across.
By definition, it's an insecure connection. Bluetooth is insecure, so it's not encrypted. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't know. Like, I don't think many call center computers would have Bluetooth enabled at all. I think it's not something that would be even possible.
Yeah, well, it would come under a known insecure protocol, wouldn't it? Under PCI DSS as a system, and you'd want to do everything you can to get rid of it, because there's no way to secure. And it's short range, so you could argue that the risk of somebody outside the building getting in is minimal, but still, it's an insecure wireless communication system, and the card data is moving over it. So it absolutely could have an impact on your security. And I think my advice would be get rid of it, plug the headset in, turn the Bluetooth off. Just don't bother with the whole world of pain it's going to cause you. Or better still, switch to DTMF so there's no card number details being read out to the operator, because that will descope everything. So you go even further and remove the card data completely. But it's something you definitely want to look at if you did use Bluetooth headsets in a call center.
Because again, if you don't, then the telephony path becomes in scope. So you need to secure it and monitor it and whatever. So again, this same as having cardholder data in a CCTV recording, it brings another element into it. Then just it could be avoided by like a standard, like a USB headset, or something like a regular chat.
That's the other thing. Most Bluetooth headsets are going to need to plug in to charge. So I think most Bluetooth headsets will work in a wide configuration. So why aren't you using? It'd just be something that I would turn around to my clients and say, just take it off. Change to wired headsets, get rid of the Bluetooth, disable it all and ban it all. Just don't bother with it. In case you couldn't tell, we're getting into a world of, oh my God, there's a lot of problems here already. We're already down a rabbit hole where there's a lot of problems. So
doomsday of PCI.
Just go back to cache and check. It's easier.
So lesson learned is just stick with wired headsets then. Just get rid of it altogether. Okay. Perfect.
Wireless makes us QSAs nervous, whatever type of wireless technology is.
Plus, to be honest, I think the only thing, because I cannot, honestly, there's no reality, I think, where a company would actually supply the Bluetooth headphones to people, because they're so expensive. Consider the alternative. So this could only happen, right, if you're allowed to bring your own. Which again should be
most
like
headsets they supply don't even have two earphones. They come with one, don't they? Because they're so cheap, companies. So let's be realistic here. Yeah, it's going to be bring your own device, which is also something that makes QSAs nervous. Bring your own device is not what you want to be involved in.
So I think it's a very unlikely scenario that this could happen.
So next one for you guys. Do we need PCI DSS controls for systems that are completely offline? Bit of a pivot here in terms of topic, but what do you think of this one?
So, I mean, there's the it depends answer again, isn't it, Tibor?
The good old QSA response. It depends. But technically, right. So first glance, no. Right. So if out of offline, cannot be reached, cannot be connected, you would think is offline, out of scope, unless again if it's like a data storage somehow, that like a tape library that does not have any connections, however, has cardholder data in it. Again, it's very old technology. But in that case, it could be in scope.
Yeah, so offline backups and offline storage and stuff, you're allowed to have them, backup sites, but if they've got card data in them, then they have to be secure the minute they come online, effectively. So the only way you can do that is to apply the controls to them while they're offline, so they're ready to be secure when they come back online. The only place you might see this in this day and age is a hot site backup, which is keeping live data regularly being updated so you can flip over to it.
Yes.
And I think the official guidance from the council is that a hot site backup isn't included in your scope until the time you switch over to it. And at that point, you should do a full change control thing whereby it's considered a significant change. You run through and assess all the controls and make sure everything is compliant at the point you switch over to it. But I normally tell my clients, I haven't had any clients with hot site backups in an awful long time, but I would want them to consider it in scope and apply the controls to it like any other environment, so that the minute you switch over, it's going to be compliant.
I think this may have been a technology that was widely used in about 20 years ago when VR sites for but now everything is cloud-based, unless you're assessing a cloud provider that has to have redundancies that could come in question. But external hard drives. Again, there is controls in PCI, how to manage it.
There is, yeah. If you've got wherever you keep your external or offline backups, there are controls around the security of the offline backups, that tapes and stuff, and where you secure them, there are controls for those. And if you're talking physical paper copies of stuff, which I suppose is technically offline, is a piece of paper offline? I know. Maybe. It's certainly not online, but if you've got paper records that are stored at paper storage place, then the physical security controls apply to that like they would any other environment that contains card data. And the controls around paper records and storage are quite hefty, because you've got to have movement controls, you've got to track it, you've got to approve all. I have quite a few clients that do that, especially clients that print, letters you get from the bank with your card details and that kind of stuff. Those clients, the printing companies, they have all this minute by minute tracking of exactly where the paper is, where it's stored and it's secured, and you've got humans involved in that whole process. Everybody's got to fill out the forms at the right time and do the right thing. I have a couple of clients that do that. So, offline stuff, there are controls that definitely apply to it.
Again, I guess the divider, right? If it holds cardholder data or can affect, again, the same old mantra for PCI, then it could potentially be in scope. But then, you just have to build your controls around it. And we are happy to support you. Find that, define your scope and
absolutely.
We always here to help. Yes, that's what we do.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for your time today. And if any of our listeners would like to ask Alastair and Tibor some questions for future episodes, then you can submit any questions you've got via a form on our website, and that will be linked in the podcast description below, or you can just submit a question in the comments. Please get your questions sent in, and thank you so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could spare a moment to leave a rating or review at ratethispodcast.com/InfoSec Insider. To listen to more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Podbean.
Thank you for listening to URM's InfoSec Insider podcast. For more information, visit our website at urmconsulting.com.